Welcome back to The Verdict. We're going to be here not all night, but all day, and we'll be here tomorrow throughout until Saturday, and hopefully until the results are announced. There's just one thing that we keep getting on social media, on our hashtag, and that is for INEC to address which finger should be used on the ballot. Perhaps they were not listening yesterday because they had said whichever one, but Mr. Okoye is there. He will address that as well as the other issues that we'll be discussing now. So should I just throw it back to you?
Not yet. I don't know if Buki is still, because you left Buki on the line when we went on break.
Is Buki still on the line? Fantastic. Apologies, Buki. We still have you on the line. So address the mood now for us in Oyo before we talk about any other thing.
Well, going around town, the mood generally is calm. You know, unlike previous campaign and election periods that we've had in the past. Oyo is relatively calm now. And I think a lot of work has gone into sensitizing the populace on the need for peaceful conduct. And I think a lot of people are buying into that because except for a few skirmishes here and there during campaigns and the loss of 2 persons at the war about 2 weeks ago, we've not had any major incidences, which is a wide departure from what we used to have in the past. And I also sense a lot of enthusiasm among the people. They really, really want to vote. That's one of the reasons why I'm surprised that a lot of people are still not, claiming their PVCs here. And it's as huge as almost 800,000. But be that as it may, we still have about 2.2 million people who have collected. And we're hoping that a large percentage of those people will actually exercise their franchise and go out to vote on Saturday. And on INEC preparedness, as you can see, I think a lot has been put in place. They even have a new collation center like in the past where journalists and election officials are at the mercy of weather elements, whether it rains or it's sunny.
Okay, is there any concern, though, about security? Is there any worry? Do you see any apprehension about security concerns on the day or even right now?
Well, right now, I can't say there are many, except for some of the parties that are, calling on the police authorities to make sure that there's adequate security for campaigns and even during the election. But among the people generally, some people are still skeptical, especially judging from Oyo State antecedents and the history in the past. Some of them are still scared that there could be violence on that day when they go out to vote. And one other thing I noticed is a lot of people still don't know that they are going to vote with the index finger this time. And I think that's a critical issue that they still need to discuss because people have been used to thumb printing and now they have to vote with their index fingers.
Yes, but we had Mr. Uzi. Sorry, Buki. Before we tell the public that is the index finger, yesterday we had the Director of Voter Education and he said, whichever finger you like, you can use. But there is a lot of that talk on social media. We'll ask Mr. Okoye also about that so we can educate them further.
Well, now, we have a statement here on the Anambra fire incident. Incidentally, Mr. Okoye, you signed this. This is from you. And essentially what is in here is what you've already told us, except for the fact that you've also re-emphasized here that the election in the state will proceed as scheduled on Saturday, that spare card readers from other states will be mopped up and deployed to Anambra, and that the incident has been reported to the police and the fire service, and investigations into the cause have commenced. The other thing that you say here is that the fire service actually came to the rescue to prevent this from spreading, which you told us already in the course, much earlier in this, in the course of tonight's programming. So that's as far as that goes. But Buki, we want to say thank you to Buki. I want to say thank you for that situation. As she did point out in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, Oyo State was sort of known for tension, so to put it delicately.
Diplomatically and
ahead of elections. And if she's reporting this time, that is not quite the case. At this point, I think we'll go back to Abuja, and this time to Mrs.
Let's talk about the register itself.
Yes, to Mrs. Hassan now. Now, many people may not know, but Mr. Okoye, who is representing INEC today, was a very prominent member of the civil society groups in the electoral process before his appointment into INEC. But Mrs. Hassan, you are still a prominent member and, as of today. If we take the voters register, I remember that in 2011 or much earlier, a lot of hue and cry went on when names like Mike Tyson and other such names were found in the voters register.
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson and so on. Those names were in the voters register at the time. But it would appear, as we've heard from INEC, that that's been cleaned up. From your own experience and from what you've observed and from your participation in the process so far, is that the case? Should we really believe this time that the voters register is much better than it was?
Yes. Actually, in the last couple of years, if you look at it from between 1999 to 2003 elections, there was a bit of sanity in the voters register. Then all of a sudden, from 2007 elections, the number was just like unbelievable. It was in 2007 that we had that very faulty voters register. So when the last INEC of Professor Jega came, there was a bit of, you found the voters register as our 2011 elections was oscillating over 70 million again. But by the time we got to the 2015 general election, it's been cleaned off to around 69 million from the previous figure of almost 75 million. So a lot of innovation was brought in. They brought the AFIS in. They tell us that if you register in 2 states, you would be caught. You cannot do double registration. Several people were even identified as having done double registration, even up till date. So that's actually a reality. There is some sanity in the voters register. And even the last cleanup for these elections took over almost, is it like 400,000 again, off from what was initially projected to be the voters register before we had the final figure in the first week of January. But be that as it may, you cannot say that completely there is a authenticity. The level of this voters register is completely clean. And this way it brings us once again to the issue of election as a stakeholders affair itself. People see INEC to be the sole person that is responsible, body responsible for these elections. In this voters register, when they display it, as citizens, we do not often go to the voters register to identify names that we know are existing on the voters register, and they are not either bona fide citizens of Nigeria, or we know that they are too young to be on that voters roll. Now, if you look at many pictures that have been circulating all of a sudden on social media, some, of course, may amount to fake news, but some may actually be genuine. And you find them to be extremely young people, claiming to be 18 years. Of course, this voters register was actually displayed in several constituencies. There is the challenge of the citizenry, and importantly, INEC also in terms of how they manage communication. Because by the time the voters register was displayed, there was not enough communication out there for people to either check their name, or aside from the community conspiracy, what we call community conspiracy, people coming together and ensuring that they can get as much people onto the voters register as possible. And one thing that is also very wrong with what we do in Nigeria is we don't do voters audits by independent bodies. Even in places like Zimbabwe, you find that civil society organizations were able to audit the voters register on their own.
But Ms. Hassan, let me just, this ties back into something that we were saying yesterday about biometric verification not curing illegal registration. I don't know whose job it will be, whether it's the police or whether it's ad hoc staff of INEC who will say, you know what, you are too young to register, you can't. But let's take our minds back and look at the veracity of the register itself and the issues surrounding that process just for this particular election. There's a lot of pain on the line, you know, in the queues. When you now start talking about voter apathy, a lot of people gave up because of the kind of process that it took. Same thing with PVC collection. So the question that we throw out, you know, out there is, how easy is it for people to actually get registered, collect their PVC? The process itself is difficult. So when before you then say to someone, go and make sure that the names on that register are verified. How can we improve the process of the election itself?
I think it's when we stop seeing election as a zero-sum game that Dr. Ishola was actually speaking on earlier. It's a contest where people believe that you have to win at all costs, and that is why you have these issues of voters register not being clean enough, not forgetting, and it's again the trust issue that is earlier mentioned, because when people know what is happening, and you know that the voters register itself determines the outcome of the elections, what happens? Then again, the access, how do you even get on the voters register? It's almost like an equivalent tax. And for people where democracy is not even delivering development, what it means that they will prefer not to be on this voters register by queuing for 5 days, not going to work, spending money to travel several kilometers to queue. And that gives room for political actors who know that they are out there, they have something to gain, to hijack the system. Then again, what kind of people are actually hired during this process? Some of this complicity also comes from the ad hoc staffs, and even possibly staff from the commission. We talk a lot about electoral impunity. We talk about politicians not being punished. We talk about perpetrators of electoral violence not being punished. But how many citizens themselves have been held to account? Or how many ad hoc staff whose queue processes have been held to account? So it's a behavioral change. It's a long chain. And we have to start seeing that election itself is not just a process like we sell it, but it's a stakeholders affair that requires the collaboration of every one of us.
Now, there's another aspect of it. We'll come back after a break in just a minute or two to discuss another aspect of the voters register, which is the cost of putting it together. The records we have indicate that Nigeria may be, and someone alluded to it in the conversation earlier, that Nigeria may be one of the most expensive electoral processes, may have one of the most expensive electoral processes on the continent, if not in the world. Why is that so? And then, for example, this voters registration exercise, the CVR that we concluded as part of the process for this election, cost some serious money. And yet, we are still hearing conversations about, well, it's not completely clean, you know, and that there. So how much money will it take for us to get it completely clean? Is it a question of money? How much are we spending? Is it the
money or mindset? Which one?
Whichever one it is. But that will be after the break. And for that, we'll go to INEC itself, and then we'll take Mr. Ojukwu as well.